Can you hear me okay? Yes, definitely. All right, so thank you everyone for hanging with us to the end of day one and staying for the talk. I was mindful coming to the conference that we have sort of two overlapping themes. One is celebrating JavaScript's 20th birthday, it having been introduced in 1995. And the other one, if you notice the graphic for the show with the Back to the Future, is reliving the 90s. And I think my role at this point is to maybe be one of the few people in the room who was actually programming in 1995, certainly programming professionally. I think there may actually be people in the room who might not have even been born in 1995. So I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands. But I did want to sort of start and introduce myself by taking advantage of the fact that I could maybe talk a little bit about 1995. And so I'll begin with that, and then I'll talk a little bit more about what we're up to at Mozilla. So that's me in 1995. A few things have changed in the years since then. In 1995, I was managing a software engineering group at Sun Microsystems. And my team, along with other teams at Sun and other companies in the industry, had just finished building this thing called the Common Desktop Environment, which was designed to be a unifying graphical windowing system for every Unix computer on the planet at the time. And we thought it was a great achievement, except for one thing. The timing of designing and building that environment had come as the web was really beginning to take hold. And so we managed to build this great standard desktop environment that didn't have any internet or web support in it at all. There was no browser, there was no tools for building any content for the web. And to many of you in the room, it's probably inconceivable that someone would actually build any kind of an environment, a desktop environment, a mobile environment, and not include support for the web and not include a web browser. But in those old days, and I'll avoid doing the grumpy old programmer bit, that's the mistake that we actually made. So I convinced my management that that was a mistake and that we should do something about it and that we should somehow package quickly the basic tools that people needed to get on the internet and use the web on their desktop computers. And we happened to, so I convinced them that that was a good idea. And at the time, in looking around, the tool that we picked to really build that experience around was Netscape Navigator. And happily, this new version of Netscape Navigator was coming, Navigator 2.0, and it was available for Solaris. And so we quickly packaged Netscape up as part of this Internet Access Plus pack that we built, made it available, and so through that effort, every Solaris computer in the world was able to connect to the internet and users could browse the internet. And of course, as you probably know, that was the version of Netscape Navigator that first introduced JavaScript as a programming language. So I have that long history. It's a small contribution, but one that's significant. And since then, or from that point, sort of put my feet on the path of being involved with the web. So for several more years at Sun, I worked with Netscape people. We built a variety of web-based platforms and technologies. Happily, so many of those have gone the way of the dinosaurs, so we no longer have to worry about having conferences about WAP and WML. There were some references to Java earlier. I won't actually go into that. And then at Nokia, I've been involved in setting the browser strategy for the company and building Internet of Things kind of products. And so all of that, along with what I do in my spare time to build connected things in my laboratory at home, have convinced me that the web is really the best platform. And I'm not telling you all anything that you don't already know, but over the course of my career, too, I had this horrible experience where I was a big advocate for the web, and I was always talking to people who said, yeah, well, the web is great, but we prefer native. We do our critical stuff in native, and then we do these other interesting, informative things with the web. And eventually, that really sort of got to me. And so I joined Mozilla in March of this year to lead the platform engineering group at Mozilla and to really be able to focus on being the web platform guy and satisfying my desires to really do everything I could to make sure that the web was truly a first-class platform and was greater than or equal to native in every way. And that's actually a great fit for Mozilla. And one of the points I guess I'd like to leave you all with coming out of this talk is that's really what we're about at Mozilla. We're a web-first company. The web is the best platform, no question about it. That's actually our mission, to keep the web open and free for all. And if you look at all the gaming stuff that's in the booth, what Nick just showed you, that's an example of where, not that long ago, we sat down with game developers and game publishers and asked them, why is it that you're not building and targeting your games and your immersive applications for the web? And they rattled off a list of reasons, including performance and visual richness and other things. And so we made a serious commitment to develop the web technologies, extend the web as a platform, extend JavaScript, and build tools around JavaScript to really make gaming something that could be a first-class experience on the web. And so that's the kind of thing that we do all the time at Mozilla. We ask, what can we build with this increasingly awesome web platform? Or, for people like Nick, what can we do to make the platform more awesome to build stuff on? And not surprisingly, we therefore love JavaScript. So this 20-year history of JavaScript and the continuing evolution of JavaScript is a really important thing for us, and it's critical, really, to us continuing our mission. Whoops. So let's talk a little bit about that perspective that we have at Mozilla and how we look at JavaScript and the web today, and then I'll sort of wrap up talking about a few things that we're excited about for the web for the future. Certainly, you're all familiar with JavaScript with ES6. We talked a little bit about it this morning. There'll be more conversations tomorrow. The new features in ES6 are outstanding. They're large, and they are really all about making JavaScript a more complete, modern, professional kind of programming language. It's great, too. We're going to hear about Babel tomorrow, I think. There are tools that are available to you so you can start using the features in ES6 where they're supported in browsers, and then you can transpile to get them to work on any browser, whatever browser you may happen to be using. ES6 is also great from a quality of life perspective. Not every feature in ES6 is a comprehensive computer science achievement. There's some very simple quality of life things like default argument values. And happily, many of these features have been available in Firefox for quite a while. So we're pleased to see the evolution of the language and the standards process as something that we can contribute to and that people have been able to experience and continue to experience. And so the admonition that we all got earlier from Christian to go take advantage of ES6 features and use them in the browser and experience them is something that we're happy that you're able to do and continue to be able to do with Firefox. Beyond ES6, there's lots of other interesting activities coming. You're probably familiar with many or all of these. There's work that will make JavaScript even more powerful as a programming language and more accessible to everyone. And here's a list here that I won't bother to read through, but extending and further modernizing the language, taking advantage of hardware, some of the things that Nick just showed you from multi-core hardware, or being able to build more sophisticated kinds of application architectures where they can collaborate and share data and operate in a much more sort of modern, multi-threaded kind of way. Again, we're happy that many of these features are available in Firefox. A lot of them are in the nightly version or in the developer edition. And so getting familiar with these features is something that we're really happy to talk to you about if you want to come by the booth and show you how you can begin to experience them or add them to your bag of tricks in the portfolio of the work that you're doing on top of Firefox as a browser. We're also very busy with some what we call JavaScript engine magic. This is maybe something that not all of you are interested in or familiar in, but it's under the hood inside of the engine to mostly improve performance. You'll see a lot of these things are for faster execution or faster load times, and obviously improving performance is important just for performance sake to make your code run faster. But as we've seen, and I'll mention in a minute, there are other reasons for trying to wring every last little bit of performance out of the runtime behavior in your application. And so we're spending a lot of time on those features and also on tools like JitCoach, which I think many of you probably are not familiar with, but an example of going the other way. Taking the engine and the magic inside the engine, some of the optimizations that are happening in the way your code is getting actually executed, and allowing that knowledge to be fed back to you as a developer so that you can sit in this very comfortable, informative loop, writing your code, feeding it into the compiler, getting feedback from the compiler, and really easily finding the path that gives you the most optimized execution experience for your code. And so it's in beta. If you're interested in finding out more about JIT Coach, come and talk to us and we'll tell you about it. So that's the JavaScript part of what we're sort of focused on and very aggressively leaning into today. Let's talk a little bit about the other piece of it, the web platform piece. Again, as I mentioned, we think about the web as a platform. For JavaScript is the programming language that helps with that. There are other things architecturally going on to allow us to build applications that have much richer functionality or much more native style experiences and behaviors. Service workers is a good example of that. First, finally, we'll have the ability to do background processing associated with but apart from a web page. And the idea with service workers is that you can, as a developer, take advantage of that architecture to do whatever it is you need to do in a background processing way. So that the service worker is in between the rest of your code and the network. So you can intercept traffic, you can reroute traffic, you can reformat, you can proxy, you can manipulate the data as it flows through. You can even adapt the behavior of the application for the networking environment, whatever it is that you're discovering through the service worker talking to the rest of the web. This also lets us build new kinds of application features in things that you would normally have had to do natively or through some external interface to a native component, such as push notifications, or any other kind of asynchronous push of data to your application or from your application to the cloud. Service workers are also great because they allow offline operations, so the service worker can continue to process data and execute locally and interact with the web page without a network connection being present. And for us, of course, this is useful not only for desktop applications but in mobile. Many of these more demanding application experiences that we're trying to enable and trying to create ourselves are targeting a mobile device experience, and service workers are playing a very important role in the work that we're doing to try and create those kinds of web-based mobile applications on a wide variety of devices. Another piece of the web platform that's a very active area for us is WebAssembly, and Nick just talked to you about that and showed you a lot of how that works. It is an important piece for a variety of reasons for us, and it has the potential to have synergy with some of the other features that are enhancing the performance or allowing us to take better advantage of the hardware, SIMD, for example. So WebAssembly complements what we can do with JavaScript, and many of these tools and techniques you can actually use with WebAssembly in your code, or you can use them just with JavaScript without WebAssembly and get the benefits of using the technologies either way. Another piece of the platform, the web platform, that we're spending some time trying to enhance and evolve is WebRTC. It's an idea that's been around for a little while. I'm not sure why it hasn't been around longer, but with all of us spending most of our time with a browser in front of us, why are we not using the browser and the web as a direct communication mechanism and to talk to each other? And so WebRTC, sort of just wrapping up the 1.0 version of that specification, while the working group begins to think about next generation features and functionality, is now supported in browsers like Firefox. And it's available not only for sort of traditional audio and video communications, but there's a data channel. So you can point-to-point interactions with voice, with video, and with data between applications and users on either end. There's also work to add conferencing and sharing functionality. So today WebRTC is predominantly used in a point-to-point mode for two people to talk directly to each other, but with the addition of conferencing and sharing, we can create much more of the kind of meeting experience that we have all the time at Mozilla, given we're such a globally distributed workforce. Lastly, WebRTC has the potential not only to sort of push information, media information out, but also allow it to be captured, and so there's the potential for recording video and audio using WebRTC coming back the other way. So a variety of additional experiences that can be created using the web as a platform from an interactive video and audio communications standpoint. So let's transition a little bit to talk about some new work that we're doing in taking advantage of the capabilities of JavaScript and the ongoing evolution of the web as a platform. Again, focused on that, on our mission. One of them is WebVR. Nick talked a little bit about it and encouraged you to come to the booth, which certainly I would do. Many of the performance speed-ups that I mentioned and that he mentioned as well really make a difference when it comes to VR. The math here is phenomenal in terms of the data rate that needs to get pushed through. And we're not just looking at that as a way of creating these new kinds of web experiences, but the benefits of these performance speed-ups actually apply to our graphics pipeline for every other kind of web application that people choose to build. So being able to refresh at 90 hertz, pushing 233 megapixels per second through our graphics pipeline is great for WebVR, but it's great for lots of other applications and services. And that's where all that conversation about speed and speed improvements in JavaScript and in the platform will be an example of where that pays off. The other piece of it, which I'm not going to encourage you to experience, but you should be mindful of, is the consequences of getting this wrong. I've actually, and maybe I shouldn't tell you this, but I've seen cases where people just weren't comfortable at all with the VR headset on. And it's an unusual experience as a programmer to be able to actually write code in such a way that you can make your customers physically ill. Not something that we want to encourage, but it's a problem that's going to be an issue if we're going to unlock VR, not only for creating the immersive content that I know you're all going to go home tonight and build using the tools that Nick showed you, but VR is interesting as a way of providing other navigational models. There's no reason not to use an immersive VR experience as a way of to navigate and discover and manage today's 2D web, if you want to think of it that way. So the technologies that are coming in VR aren't necessarily just about building new worlds and getting away from our mundane regular world into some escapist fantasy world, but giving us technologies that we can use to create new ways of visualizing and exploring and searching and discovering and interacting with traditional kinds of web content and existing kinds of applications and services. The other thing to be mindful here, and I noticed it happening a lot in the booth today, people come with their friends and one of them puts the headset on and the other one immediately whips out their phone and takes a picture of their friend with this sort of goofy headset on. That's the way that technology looks today. Very quickly, that's going to change. And VR headsets will look like this, and they'll be much more comfortable and much more fashionable, and a more relaxed and casual way of experiencing the web. You'll be able to actually function with your computers and the web in general and switch back and forth or experience the VR-based world without a lot of that jumping back and forth that we need to do today. So one interesting domain. And the other one that I think we haven't talked about very much at all is the web of things. And you'll notice it's web of things because if you think about what the internet is going to look like 2-3 years from now, what the web is going to look like 2 or 3 years from now, we're going to have a lot more things connected to the web. That you can think of them as potentially maybe their content sources or their sources and sinks for activities. They're things I can reach out through the web and sense and manipulate and control. And so the world of the web will have more, I would like to have this number, but we'll have more things connected to the web than we had servers and web pages connected to the web in 1995. So this is an evolution that's happening. We think about this from the perspective of the impact that the web platform can have. There's a wide variety of devices that can be connected to the web and that you can interact with. So we have, for example, Firefox OS running on televisions to create a web experience on that kind of alternative screen. We heard a little bit earlier today about using JavaScript and the web with other kinds of devices like robots. And there's actually a rather large sort of industrial web of things that we really don't tend to think about very much that again represents an opportunity for JavaScript and web platform technologies to be much more a part of the functions of normal things around us or around us at work on a day-to-day basis. A thing we haven't talked about very much in terms of bringing these technologies to the web are some of the other more challenging problems that I guess the habit will be we'll build the basic connecting technology and then we'll stumble over these other problems and struggle to figure out what to do with them. But discovery is one. This room might be full of hundreds of discoverable web-connected things. How do you find them? How do you access them? How do you decide whether, or how does it decide whether to give you information or allow you to change its behavior or not? So those pieces of the web security model, the web access model, may or may not extend in a reasonable form to this kind of connected device experience, this web of things experience. And we need to think about how to extend the web platform and the access models and the language support for those things to encompass those additional challenges that we're going to discover. Additionally, many of these devices, what's valuable about the web of things is not the things, it's the data that they produce. And we're going to go through a period with the web of things where there's going to be as much interest about taking that data and mashing it up as there was about taking web information on the traditional web 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and mashing it up as well. I'd like it if my sleep tracker and my Nest thermostat and my internet-connected door locks and the lighting systems in my house could all sort of be managed together and figure out that I'd fallen asleep and so change the thermostat setting, turn the lights off, lock the door, and that kind of mashup is something that's going to be very interesting to us once we get beyond the point where people are comfortable sharing the data that these connected things are gathering and sort of publishing as web content. So, thank you very much. We're glad to be a part of BrazilJS. I noticed earlier from the sign that we're an Adamantium sponsor. I don't think I've ever been an Adamantium sponsor or seen an Adamantium sponsor. I'm not really sure what's supposed to happen as a result of that, but I'm looking forward to it. And I apologize in advance for what happens. Please do come talk to us in the booth. We're here today. We'll be here tomorrow. There's lots of, we apologize for the noise, but I'd love to have you come by, see if you can't beat my score on some of the games that we've been playing, and let us know more about where you would like to be working with us around the work that we do all the time with JavaScript and the web as a platform, with the developer edition and with Nightly, to put all these tools in your hands or build the tools that you would like to have to really continue to make the web the best platform and the first choice for immersive applications and experiences that all of us want to develop and all of us want to use. So, thank you very much.